I'm a primary care doctor. I just retired about a year ago. What I used to do for diabetes 40 years ago and what we do now is like way different, right? We have way better tools, way better controls.
Why modern medicine and the fear of culture are often interlinked in today's world?
Now, when a patient comes, they've been on the internet and they've used AI. So they are way more knowledgeable about what's going on. And many doctors get intimidated by that.
Have you seen worry manifesting into physical ailments somewhere?
So I had patients that when they were working, their blood pressure was high and it took 3 medicines to get it under control. They stop working, bang, they don't need any medicines in the blood pressure control.
Why is smile so difficult to find these days?
Smiling and laughing are really social signals to other people around us. I've seen a lot of rich people who are miserable, and I've seen a lot of poor people who are really happy with their life because they feel fulfilled.
I have myself been there, anxiety eating me away, waiting for that confirmation email or call. I know we all have been there where we have a deadline approaching or we are waiting for somebody or even funds being credited into our accounts at the start of the month. For business owners, it's probably every day where we have been anxious, where we have been stressed out what's going to happen next. We are finding it difficult to digest and absorb the uncertainty of life that's there. And I have myself had countless sleepless nights, probably at times 4 nights in a row, where because of some decisions I was not able to take, they were keeping me awake. And I know we all have been there. And the very next morning, we are cranky, we are irritated, always jumping into a fight or an argument rather than responding to people. And worst of all, we feel disconnected with our own self. And probably after the pandemic, this has become the new normal. But yes, there has been a lot of awareness that has also come into picture, where many people are working towards gearing themselves up, evolving them. And today we have with us Dr. Gary Sprouse, who is going to be helping us evolve from a world that celebrates busyness, sloganess, and glorifies hustle culture. Welcome, Dr. Gary.
Well, thank you so much for having me on here. I am looking forward to this. And the one thing I try to say to people, don't resign yourselves to being stressed out. There is answers, there's ways to not be so stressed out.
Totally agree, Gary, with you. But help me understand one aspect of the whole continuum of stress and anxiety out there. Why is it so difficult to communicate?
Well, so here's what I found, right? So I've done a lot of research on, so I'm a primary care doctor. I just retired about a year ago, but all of my patients would come in, their high blood pressure, diabetes, and they would all be stressed out, which would then complicate their treatment for their high blood pressure and diabetes. So I did a lot of research, reading books and articles on where stresses are coming from and what's going on. And most of the books that were written would say like, okay, there's 100, they would look at the top 100 stresses, like losing a spouse, losing your job, and they would rank them into like, here's the most stressful and so forth and so on. And then they would give you generic prescriptions and say, okay, well, meditate or go to church or use mindfulness or go do yoga or whatever, right? And I was like, this isn't working because people are getting more stressed now, not less. So something's wrong with this equation. So as a doctor, I'm used to writing prescriptions, and the prescriptions would say, hey, here's a medicine for your blood pressure. It works great, but it might have some side effects. Like, it might make you dizzy or cause a skin rash or might make your muscles ache. And then we would work on this, if the medicine was working, then we'd figure out a way to get rid of the side effects. So when I turned that lens onto human stresses, here's what I found out. So humans are amazing. We have these incredible skills. So one of the skills we have is envisioning the future. So we can say, hey, next week I'm going to do this. Next year I'm going to do that. When I get old enough, I'm going to retire. So we have all this incredible vision to the future. But the side effect is, oh, then we have to worry about it. So my 1-year-old grandson can't envision the future. So he literally can't worry. He can't do it because he doesn't have the skill. So he doesn't have the side effect. So he doesn't sit at his breakfast table going, Dad, how are we going to pay for college? Like it doesn't come up because he doesn't even know what that is, right? So his life is gloriously less stressed, but he also isn't very successful. So he needs his parents to take care of him because when you can't envision the future, that gets you into trouble, right? as a doctor, I would took care of a lot of patients in nursing homes that had dementia. And so they used to have the skill of envisioning the future, but then they lost it. And so now they sit in the nursing home and they don't have any future either. So they're in the same place. So they're a lot less stressed. But again, they can't take care of themselves. So we have to, they're taking care of them. But they're not sitting around going, huh, how are we going to pay for this nursing home? It's really expensive. Next month, I don't know, right? It doesn't come up. So the key, and this is what I wrote the book, is to say, like, we could follow what psychologists tell us and say, well, just live for today. And you're like, well, that's a great concept, right? Because if you just live for today, which is what my 1-year-old grandson does and my demented patient does, they live for today because they don't have in the future, right? But they're not very successful. So the question then is, how can I live? How can I keep my skills of envisioning the future and lose the side effect of worrying about it?
I agree. I agree. With a lot of achievements and a lot of work that we do, there's this worry that creeps into our lives, and I believe, somewhere or the other, that becomes one of the root causes for a lot of stress and anxiety that happens to us.
I would suggest that probably 80 to 90% of stress that's out there is a side effect to our skills. So when you start talking about worry, it's amazing to me to watch people because like I'd have patients come to me and go, Dr. Sprouse, I worry that I worry too much. And I'm like, well, then you probably do, right? But here's the weird thing. Like this is the thing that was shocking to me. So I would say to somebody, okay, so you do a lot of worrying and it's causing problems. Tell me what worry is. And you would think that everybody has a snap answer for that, and they do not. They're like, well, it's worry. You're like, well, that's nice, but you can't really fix that if you don't know what it is. And even when I'm talking to psychologists, they can come up with a definition, but it's not concrete. Like if you said to me, what's diabetes? I would say, oh, you don't have enough insulin, and the insulin you have isn't working right, and this receptor and the pancreas is it. Like I have incredible detail, which then also means I have incredible tools that have been developed. Even during my career as a physician, what I used to do for diabetes 40 years ago and what we do now is like way different, right? We have way better tools, way better controls. With worry, it's still like, well, it's worry. And I'm like, that's not working. We got to find something else. So one of the things that I went through and said, here's worry. So worry is we have this incredible skill of envisioning the future. And we focus on all the bad things that can happen. And then what makes it really bad is then we have a fear reaction right now. So we're having fear reactions to something that is a bad outcome. That's a possibility. And the problem with that is there's nothing to make it stop. Like
Yeah.
if my dog is sitting in our house and a big dog comes in the yard and she can see it or smell it, she's up, her fur sticking up, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as the dog goes out of the environment and she can't sense it anymore, she goes back to laying on the floor like a rug, right? I'm sitting there going, what would happen if I was outside with my 1-year-old grandson and that big dog came in? What if I hurt my leg and I couldn't run it? Yeah, right. So I can think up all these negative, bad outcomes and then have a fear reaction right now. And there's nothing to make that stop because there's no big dog out in the yard right now, right? So all I have to do is think about it and then I have a fear reaction.
I totally agree, Gary, on this. One thing that I really look into, Gary, is worry often comes with comparison as well, or it's often put in inflicted by the people in your environment as well. If they're finding you calm, it often gets very difficult. They are constantly going to be nagging you with the different possible outcomes, and to a certain extent you're able to dodge, but yes, one particular thing or scenario that creeps into your mind, and then you are totally boggling out. Like if I share my own example, I just recently got selected for a master's program in India's biggest leading premier institute of management.
Nice.
And for
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. For last 2 months after I received my result, I was totally chilled out, no stress, nothing at all. And one of my friends, he was constantly like, because he is already doing it from another premier institute, that let your course start. You're gonna be all stressed out, anxious, and getting into too much of work chaos out there because it's gonna be in parallel to the professional life. It's not just going for that masters, but yes, you're balancing your work as well alongside. And you're gonna have very short timelines. You will not have free time. I was all chilled out. I was like, I will look into it. Nothing is going to happen. And in the previous week, I meet him and he's again, just nudging me with all these same scenarios. And that one particular scenario gets in, creeps in. And since that day, I'm just so overwhelmed with things
Hmm.
that I'm finding it difficult. Today, being a Monday, was more or less free for me. It was one of the best Mondays anybody could ask for.
Yes.
But still, my mind was stressed a bit. I was worrying what's going to happen. I have got a 90 hours module in front of me. And throughout the day while I was working, I could just think about it rather than acting upon it, or if, spending 30 minutes or 40 minutes to cover that 90 hours. I was just procrastinating about it and not acting upon it. So, what are your thoughts on something like
All
this?
right. So you and I are going to have a therapy session right now, okay?
Sure.
And then everybody else can relate to it. Okay. So here's the two tools that I worked on for people with worry, right? So the first one is called realistic optimism. All right.
Mhm.
So what realistic optimism is the antidote to worry. Okay. So what that says is so worry actually involves pessimism. And pessimism is I'm focusing on the negative things that can happen. So now I want you to be optimistic. And I went, and it sounds like for a couple of weeks you were optimistic. This is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And how did that make you feel?
Pretty good.
Made you feel good, right? So all you had to do was think, oh, this is going to be great. And you felt good. How nice is that? Now you've switched and you focus on a negative outcome, and that makes you feel bad. And you're like, but if you keep focusing on the negative things, it's going to make you feel bad if you focus on the positive things. So you have the choice. You can focus on the negative or you can focus on the positive. Here's what I've seen. And I've seen a lot of marriages deteriorate because of this. So men in general, when they deal with stresses, tend to minimize them to the point where they don't have to pay attention to them. Women tend to share their stresses. And so they think of worry as an action. They think that by worrying, that's actually helping solve the problem. What I find is that it would, except that they worry inefficiently. So they just go over and over and over and over the same thing, but they feel like that's a part of the process. It is not, okay? Worry by itself, having that fear reaction is not. But then they look at their spouse and go, what's going on? Why don't you have to worry? Why do I have to do all the worrying? And you're like, well, because you are. And you're like, right? So what you see is when people think that worry is a part of the solution and that becomes what they do, then they just kind of that becomes their identity until worrying becomes a part of the solution. So I've had this happen with my wife where she's like worried about something and I'm sitting there very calmly. She's like, why are you being so calm? Why do I have to do all the worrying? I'm like, honey, it's not that I'm not paying attention to the problem, but I'm not having my fear reaction. I'm dealing with this out fear. And that, so now the second half of realistic optimism is the realism part. So you can't run around going, oh, this master's program is going to be awesome and everything's going to be great and it's all going to work out. No, because there are some possibilities where it might not. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to be realistic about it. You can't ignore that there's bad things that could happen. But here's the key is you don't have to have a fear reaction that you can plan without fear. And that brings up the second tool, which I call the worry organizer. So one of the problems with worry is we do it in our head and it's just thoughts and concepts and ideas and they just run around in your head and they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat going, oh, what am I supposed to do? Ah. Or then you run around going, oh, I forgot I was supposed to worry about that, right? So the answer is to write it down. So my good friend tells me, he goes, the palest ink is better than the best memory. And you're like, yeah, because when you write it down, it takes more effort, but then it's done. You only have to do it once. So when you wake up at 2 in the morning and you go, oh yeah, I already wrote that down. So then you can go back to sleep. Okay. So the worry organizer, it organizes your thinking. So instead of running around like a chicken with its head cut off, now it's organized. So here's the organization. So what is it that I'm worried about? So I'm going to say like, I'm afraid that my plane is going to crash. Like I'm worried about getting on the plane. And you're like, why are you worried about getting on a plane? And you're like, well, I'm worried it's going to crash because just in India, they just had a big plane crash, right? And you're like, well, wait, what? Like, okay, yeah. You go, well, the plane's not going to crash. You're like, you don't know that. Just plane just crashed, right? So like, you can't say to people it's not going to crash because maybe it will, right? So what is it that I'm worried about, and why am I worried about it? We just had a plane crash, right? So the next column, the third column, it says, well, how likely is it to happen? but then slash how dangerous. So with planes, what you get is, well, planes don't crash very often, one in a million, maybe even less than that. But when they do crash, everybody, one person died on that plane, right? So it's really super dangerous. So even though it's not very likely, it's super dangerous. So that's why people then worry about it. Okay.
Yeah.
I had another patient who was worried about getting breast cancer. And what she said was, when I asked her that question, she goes, how likely is you going to get breast cancer? And she's like, well, 100%. And I was like, why do you say that? She goes, well, my mom and my sister both had breast cancer. And I go, well, if you get it, how likely is that you're going to die? And she's like, 100%. And I'm like, well, she's living with a death sentence. 100% she's going to get it, 100% she's going to die. So when I gave her and here's the key. So when I gave her the statistics, the real ones, it turns out if you have a family history of breast cancer, your chance of getting breast cancer, 15%. And she looked at me and her whole body language changed because she's like, wait, 15%, that's it? She just got her life back.
Yeah.
And then she's like, and I said, your chance of dying, because we're going to catch it early, is you got an 85% chance of surviving. And she was like, whoa, whole different life, right? But that came because we were able to write it down and she was able to verbalize what was going on. And I could see what she was thinking and where the inaccuracies were, and I could change them. So then the next column is, well, what can I do to make it not happen? So, like if you're getting on a plane, you can go make sure you're on a reputable airline, make sure the wings are de-iced, make sure the pilot's not drunk, right? If it's crappy weather, maybe reschedule, right? I mean, these are things you are in your control, right? And then the last column is, well, okay, what if the plane crashes? What do I do? Like, what the disaster happens, I get breast cancer, the plane crashes. So if your plane crashes, most likely you're dead. So
Yep.
you don't have to worry about what you're going to do, but what you can do is go, "Ooh, you know what? I got to make sure that my kids are taken care of. I'm going to make sure my will's done. I'm going to make sure my life insurance policy is paid up. I mean, right? So these are all the things I can do. So if the worst happened and I died, like these are all the things. Like here's what I want to wear at my funeral, right? That kind of stuff, right? For the lady with the breast cancer, it's like, well, let's make sure you know where the best breast cancer institutes are. So you don't have to go searching around when you're freaking out because you got diagnosed with breast cancer. It's already done for you. So now when you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't have to like run around in your head trying to figure out what to do. You go, oh, it's already written down. And then I got it on a piece of paper. So I don't have to spend half my brain power remembering what I'm supposed to worry about. It's written right there. So now I can spend all of my brain power trying to figure it out. And I can now show it to you, show it to my doctor, show it to an expert on accounting or life insurance or whatever. And they don't have to guess what's in my head because it's all written down here. And I go, hey, can you add something to this column? What do you think these statistics? Are they right? Are they wrong? Right? So one of the examples that I use is for kids and parents. And your 16-year-old comes in and says, hey, Dad, I want to go to a concert. And you're like, I don't know. And they're like, yeah, it's not a big deal. I'm going out with my friend. They're like, all right, 5% chance you're going to get in trouble and you're here so I can take care of it. And then he goes, oh, yeah, but it's in another state. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. Things just changed, right? And you're like, it's still a concert. It's not gonna, right? And like, so now you start arguing. But if you don't have statistics, now you're going, you're a snotty little kid who doesn't respect his parents. And you're like, you're a daughter, fool that you don't even understand, right? So you're just fighting with each other. Instead of going, hey, look, the chance of me getting in trouble is 5%. And the father's going, yeah, I know, but now you're in another state. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know anybody that's a cop there, blah, 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 right? So now you don't have to call each other names. You can just go, hey, I just called up the state police of this other state and they said the statistics are this. And now you can start talking about numbers and facts as opposed to calling each other names. So the worry organizer helps in a lot of ways. So I envision a loose leaf notebook where you got one problem, one piece of paper, next problem, another piece of paper, next worry, another piece of paper. And now you can just flip them out, right?
Yep, yep. And I believe the worry organizer and what I wanted, was trying to communicate through the communication aspect. They both somewhere or the other are interlinked because if we learn the art of communication, whether it's internally or externally, um, I believe probably 90% of the worries and issues would be taken care of. The
I literally just wrote that down the other day. Yes, miscommunication, not a good thing, right? So
yeah,
yeah, but
because
here's the other point that you brought up. You said you were doing fine until your friend came and said something to you, right? This is why. So think about this. I was just on a vacation and I'm in Germany, okay? And we're going to these beautiful castles. They're huge. They're up on a hill. They're just gorgeous, right? Artwork, painting, frescoes, whatever, right? And you're like, but our lives are so much better now than they were in those days. Like we have air conditioning, we have telephones, we have TVs, we have a car that drives us around, right? We have a button that we can turn the TV on, right? We have all kinds of amazing stuff. And yet we're probably more stressed out now than they were. And you go, why? One of the answers is because we have more information. So if you're a king in Germany and you're sitting in a castle, you only know what's in Germany or what's around you. You don't even know there is an India. You don't even know there is a China, right? But we, because we have internet and social media, our environment now isn't just the room around me. It's not just the United States. It's the whole world is now. So I'm going, so we're having a flood in Texas. They don't even know that because their TVs aren't working, right? They don't have power. Like I'm worried about what's going on in India with a plane crash, and I'm worried about what's going on in Israel and Ukraine and what's going on in China. What do they really, it's like what's going on with Iran? I don't know, right? So the world now is our environment. So our environment has gone from this little local place to the whole earth. Oh, but that's not all because we have future. So now it's not just the earth now, it's the earth 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Oh, global warming. Right? So we have so much more awareness. There's so many more things to worry about that we now spend way more time stressed out. And what I see is the smarter you are, or the more socially connected you are, the more things you can think up to worry about.
Yep.
Because the internet is doing what your friend does. It goes, oh my God, here's the worst case scenario. And you're like, I didn't even think about that. Right?
Yep.
So we have to be very careful because so social media and the internet is amazing. The power that's in those things is amazing. Side effects are, then it gives you way more things to worry about. So that's why it becomes important for realistic optimism and the worry organizer so that you can process all this information, but do it without fear. So there's a book that I read called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's 300 pages long of all the things that happens to your body when you get stressed out. Your cortisol levels go up, your adrenaline level goes up, this, and that, right? Like you can drive your car at 100 miles an hour for a while, but after a while it starts breaking down and your body's the same way. So we weren't designed to have a fear reaction that went on continuously. We were designed get a fear reaction, run away or hide, and then calm down. But we don't do that. So now we run that engine at 100 miles an hour for days and weeks and years, and that's where we get into trouble.
Oh, I agree. I agree with the increase in urbanization. Uh, the working hours have increased, the resting hours have decreased, and personal hours have gone to zero. And I believe the personal hours where we were connected with ourselves, where we were finding things to introspect, time to introspect, on our thoughts, that has gone completely off the radar. And that introspection has been, replaced with worry and stress. So that's what I believe in. And one thing, you mentioned something about the modern medicine in the very first question that I asked you. Uh, I would like to really like to understand, since you have been a primary care doctor, Gary, why modern medicine and the fear of culture are often interlinked in today's world, where now I have seen, and even I consider myself as well, we fear to go to a hospital or to a doctor. So why is that happening, where the doctors are supposed to be giving us relief about any ailment that could be happening in our body? But there is now a culture of fear being developed and a notion where it's only about putting the patient under the blade. What are your thoughts on that?
So there's a couple of things. So I'm going to talk about Western medicine because other countries do medicine very differently, but I'm going to talk about because this is the one I know, right? So there's a couple reasons that happens. So number one, so when I first started in practice, there wasn't an internet, right? So when patients come to my office, they didn't know, they didn't have any information. Maybe they talked to their friend that had the same problem or whatever, but their information is very limited. So when they came, they were asking me to give them the information. So I had gone all my training. Here's the information. You got diabetes. This is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. But now when a patient comes, they've been on the internet and they've used AI. So they are way more knowledgeable about what's going on. And many doctors get intimidated by that. So if you come to your doctor and say, hey, I was just on the internet and they said for diabetes, you should do this. Well, the doctor goes, what? What do you mean you're on the internet? Stay off the internet. Like, just come to me. If you come to me, then you get your answers from me, blah, 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 right? Well, then that makes patients upset because now they have information. Or they'll say, the doctor will give them this medicine, and the patient will go, hey, doc, I just read about that medicine. It does this. And they're like, what? So then they get intimidated. And so patients don't like that because now they have information. But the second problem that patients run into is they now have information, but they don't have any experience. So they come in with a rash going, doc, I think I have, you know, Lyme's disease or I have Steven Johnson syndrome. And you're like, wait, what? And I, no, I've seen Steven Johnson syndrome. This is not that, right? So, so when I practiced, what I saw was like I encouraged my patients to get on the internet and look up the information because that was the most important thing to them. But then they needed to come to me because I had the experience to know what to do with the information and to make sure that it was accurate. So then patients were calm because they were given the okay to go on the internet and change things out, but not freak out before they came to me and said, hey, let's work this together. And as a team, we work together because the patient is the one that has to take the medicine or go to get the procedure done or go in the hospital. I just sit back. So my job was never to be, the father figure and say, do this or else. It was to be, I'm here as a guide to say, I'm going to make your life as I'm going to give you the best advice I can to make your life as good as possible. But it's your life, right? So if you go, hey, I don't want to do that, we're like, well, okay, then we'll figure out something else that you might be willing to do. A lot of doctors aren't willing to do that. They go, this is the way it is, particularly nowadays, because they go, I only have 15 minutes, and here's the protocol, and we do this, and I'll see you in a couple weeks or a couple months or whatever it is, right? So that's one. Two is that when I started, that was your lifestyle. So you were a doctor 24/7, whether you were in your office, whether you're at a party, whether you're at a baseball game, it didn't matter. If somebody came to you and said, hey, doc, I got this rash, I got this pain, what do you think it is? You just did it because that was who you are, that was your lifestyle. But nowadays, most doctors are employees. And so they see themselves as 8 to 5 workers. They're actually more blue collar workers. So when it's 5 o'clock, they're like, if you ask them a question, I had this happen. I was trying to get a patient, a neurologist. I had to call 5 neurologists in one afternoon. The first one was like, oh, I don't work there anymore. The second one was like, well, it's 5 o'clock, so you got to call this guy. The third one was like, well, I only deal with headaches. I don't deal with that. So call this hospital. I call that. Oh, I'm not on call for that because we had a business arrangement. It didn't work out. Fifth one, I finally got to, and he's like, well, just send him to the ER. I'm like, the whole reason I was calling is not send the person to the ER. Come on, right? But that's where we live now. Is most doctors are employees, and so they're like, hey, it's 5 o'clock and I'm done, right? Which as a patient, they don't like. So for me, I'm still in that mode. So even though I'm retired, I get probably more phone calls now going, doc, I just went to see my doc and he said this. What do you think? So I've actually been thinking about starting a business where I'm the patient advocate, where I go, hey, you call me and I'll translate. So I would go to my stepdad's neurology appointment, and the neurologist is like jibber jabbering and saying all this stuff. He's talking really fast. He's got a medical student and he's explaining stuff to her. And I'm like, Dad, do you understand what he just said? And he's like, well, not really. So even though he's going like this, right, it's all going over his head. So I'm sitting there going, okay, let me translate for what the guy just said to you. Here's what he wants you to do, right? Let me dumb this down, not dumb it down, but let me get it to a level where you can understand it because you can't understand all this stuff. He's talking to a medical student. You're not a medical student. Let me give it to you so you can understand it. And then he felt much better. And you could see that he got much more out of the visit and he was more relaxed when he got home because he was really just doing this when he had no idea what they were talking about. So I think that's another reason why people get nervous. And then the fourth, and I think your example was perfect. They have, like as a doctor, I know, like if, like I had this, I was laying in bed and I felt this thing in my belly. I'm like, that's not supposed to be there, right? Like this is not good. This could be bad. And as a doctor, I know all the bad things that it could be, right? And I'm like, this is not good at all. So I ordered a CAT scan for myself. Lucky that I have that flexibility. And it came back normal. And I'm like, all right, well, there's something there, but I guess it's okay, right? So a couple months later, I was getting some ultrasound done for my arteries to make sure they weren't blocked up. And I was like, hey, can you run the machine over my belly? And she's like, yeah. So she runs to me like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "What do you mean, oh my God? Nobody likes to hear, oh my God." Wait, what? So she goes, "You have a 17 centimeter cyst on your kidney. That's this big. It's like, right, this big." And I'm like, "Wait, what? What do you mean I got a 17 centimeter cyst?" Right? So I'm calling back the radiologist going, "You said it was normal." He goes, "Well, I said you had a cyst on your kidney." I go, "But you didn't say it was 17 centimeters." Right? So like you have a so as a doctor, I know, oh, that could be really bad stuff. Duh, like as a patient, you just go, ooh, I don't know. Like you can only think of one thing it could be, right? I can think of 20 things it could be, and I'm already way ahead going, surgery, this, needles, right, right. Anyway, good. The end of the story was it was good, and that it's just a cyst. It's not cancer. It's just sitting there. Trying to get rid of it would be way worse than just leaving it alone. And I was saying to the doctor, like, well, I jog, so when I'm jumping up and down, and you got this ball that's like pounds in there, is that? He said, nah, it's all it's hooked in. You'll be fine. I'm like, all right. So then now I'm relaxed. So I've done my five things, right? I've gone, hey, what am I worried about? Why am I worried about it? How likely? Da, 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 da. And the last one is, what do I do about it? Well, right now you just keep an eye on it and let it go. So then to me as a guy, I just go, okay, it's not cancer. We're just gonna live watch it. It's not causing any problems. Even if it did break and rupture, it would just get absorbed back in, not cause. So we're all good to go. So now that worry taken off the plate. Take that page out, put in the trash can.
But many of the people out there are not that knowledgeable to know what the actual scenario is. And with every other doctor you go, it's a different diagnosis coming in picture. There's very seldom you find synchronicity between the diagnosis of different doctors.
Yes, and that's exactly well, so right, because here's what I realized, right? So I'm a primary care doctor. When I started, I was your primary care doctor. I was the guy who called at nights and weekends. I was the guy who saw you in the hospital. I was the guy that took you care of your father in a nursing home. I was, right, I would stitch you up. I would take off your skin cancer, right? Like you only had one doctor. So you got used to that person and you had repeated episodes where things went well. So you learned to trust the doctor. So when he said something that didn't quite feel right, you're like, well, all right, but I trust this doctor, right? So now there's a guy for your primary care. There's a guy that has a walk-in center, and that there's 10 guys in there. In your primary care office, there might be 10 people now that you have to see. You might not see yours. You got a walk-in center with 10 people. There's a hospital with 10 different people. There's a nursing home with 10 different people. So now you got 50 different doctors that are all taking care of you and you don't even know who they are. And you're like, so now you're trusting people that you've never interacted with them. So you don't know whether you really can trust them or not. And that's just the start. Because then you get on the internet and there's 50 other doctors. And as you say, they all have different opinions. So this came to a head with the pandemic that you talked about. So I went through like literally hundreds of articles to get the best information I could for each patient. And so they'd come in and say, you need to get a vaccine. You're 65 years old. You got emphysema. You need to get a vaccine. They're like, no, I was on the internet and this guy said that it's bad and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, 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 you're not. And that's one of the things where I did not like this because they were now taking some guy on the internet's advice. It sounded good, but I'm like, that's one voice. I got 100 voices that I went through, and they're all saying this 100 to 1. And they're like, no, I'm going to go with the one because that's what they were comfortable. Like, but that's not right, right? You should be getting a vaccine. I had patients die because they didn't get the vaccine. One lady in particular had asthma, and she was in her 50s, and she didn't get the vaccine, and then she got COVID and died. And I'm like, and I'm talking to her husband, going, this did not have to be that way. Oh, that was so frustrating. But it was her life. She gets to decide what she does. But now she's in left. Now she's died, and he's grieving. And it's like this isn't. It's not good. But this is where the problem comes in because now you're right. You got 10 different opinions, and you're trying to figure out which one. And you're going on the internet trying to make the decision. And it's like it gets confusing when you some more times you just have to stick with one voice and go, okay, whatever that guy says, we're going to go with it.
Understood. Understood. Can you help me understand, since we have been talking about worry and stress a lot, have you seen worry manifesting into physical ailments somewhere? So if you can elaborate a
Oh,
bit.
this Well, that's what I was talking about. That book is 300 pages long, and these are all the things that can happen to you. So yeah, no. So I had patients that when they were working, their blood pressure was high, and it took 3 medicines to get it under control. They stop working, bang, they don't need any medicines in their blood pressure control. Their weight goes up 100 pounds. They stop working, all of a sudden they lose weight, their blood pressure goes down, their diabetes goes away. No, it has when you put a lot of so cortisol, which is one of the chemicals that gets released when you're having fear reactions, is basically prednisone. And I don't know how much your audience knows about prednisone. Prednisone is a great drug, but it has crazy side effects. It makes you fat, it makes you have diabetes, it makes your blood pressure go up, it makes your skin rashes, it makes you right, all these things that go, your eyes don't work right, blah, 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 right? And that's what happens. So your cortisol level goes up in your body and it helps you get ready to run away or maybe to fight. But when you run at 100 miles an hour for a long time, it definitely has side effects on your body that are bad. And so but there's a term that I read about just recently called allostasis. So this goes to what we're talking about. So we talk about homeostasis, which is sort of like, hey, your body temperature should be 98.
Hmm.
And so, like it's a thermostat. And if it's too hot, you start sweating. If it's too cold, you start shivering, right? But the body, it does some of that. But there's this other thing called allostasis, where your body's actually trying to get ready for what might come. So when you work with your hands a lot, the body starts building up a callus because it says it's predicting you're going to keep working with your hands. So we better protect that area. When you stop working with your hands, your body goes, okay, I guess we're not going to do that anymore. So they get rid of the calcium and your hands get soft again, right? So blood pressure is like that. So if you're in fear, your body's going, okay, there could be a line after us. So we got to get ready. Let's get ready. Let's jack up our blood pressure. Let's do this. Let's do that because we got to be ready to run away. Oh, wait, it doesn't say, wait, there's no lion, there's no tiger. It just goes, you're afraid, so we got to do this. So your body's in allostasis, always trying to prepare as if there's a lion trying to get you. And so it's doing that. So when you finally decide, you know what, there's no lion, it's not trying to get me, then your body goes, oh, okay, now we can just calm down. And we don't need to take a blood pressure medicine.
Understood. Understood. And you very rightly pointed out, Gary, with us being constantly in the fight and flight mode, we have now found that being stressed is comfortable for us. If we are not stressed, we often feel that something's wrong with us, and that's where a lot of ailments are coming out. But is it possible to unlearn stress where we actually identify the normal state our body needs to be in?
Well, so one of the questions you had asked me earlier was about stress, in that what I think is we don't even recognize how much stress we're under. So here's an example I use as myself, right? So I'm at a dinner table talking with an insurance agent and the phone rings. So I go, okay, like, okay, where's his chest pain at? Oh, it's gone in. It's just here. And it's in, if he burps, it goes away. If he drinks something, it gets better. Okay, we'll just give him some Maalox and call me back if it doesn't get better, right? And I hang up the phone and I go back to the agent. He's like, you just told someone with chest pain to take Maalox. What if he was having a heart attack? Ah, right. And I'm like, wait. And so as a doctor, sometimes you're making decisions because of your training that other people would be freaking out. But even you yourself, you tend to minimize. So you're actually having all these stress, you don't even realize it. So I would be on call for a weekend and get 100 phone calls, which meant then I had to make 100 decisions. And by the end of the weekend, I'm like, oh, right? Because making a decision takes energy and it's stressful because every decision you make could be $1 million decision because it could be wrong and somebody could die or somebody could sue you, right? So you tend to minimize what stresses you're feeling so you can get through the day. So people don't even understand how much stress they're under because they tend to go, it's just part of the background. It's sort of like you get into a place where there's a strong odor, but when you stay there long enough, you don't smell it anymore because, right? So stress is that same way. It's there. So when I was in college in medical school, I used to travel into the Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, and it took me 15 minutes if there was no traffic. But if there was traffic, it took an hour. And if it rained, it took 2 hours, right? I didn't even realize how tight my body was until I moved to a more rural area. And when I would go back to the city and end up in traffic, I could go, then I could feel it. Then I was like, get out of my, right? But I didn't even notice when I was doing it because it just became the background, right? So what I see then is we have to be willing to identify where that stress is. We have to be willing to see what stress we're feeling and identify it. And that's why I think my book talking about, the book is called Highway to Your Happy Place, Roadmap to Less Stress. it allows you to see where your stresses are coming from, right? It's, hey, I'm worried, and worry is, oh, I'm looking into the future. So if you're looking into the future and you're feeling fear, well, then you go, oh, let's fill out a worry orders. Maybe that'll make it go away. Let me focus on the good things that could happen instead of the bad things, right? That kind of stuff. So, the other thing that I see is, and there's a second book that I got involved with, a guy named Jack Canfield who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. And that book's called Mindset Matters. And what someone asked me the question recently, is there such a thing as good stress and bad stress? And my answer was no, it's all in your head. We're always stress to me is uh, the environment. We're always changing. Our environment's always changing. And our stress is trying to compensate and adjust to those changes. So we're always changing. Our environment's always changing. So the stress is us accommodating to these things in all the different phases: physical, psychological, monetary, right? Sociologically, right? Economically, right? We're trying to adjust to all these different things. So there's always, always, always going to be stress. It's how we view the stress that's important. So some people, I consider myself a low stress kind of reactor, right? So if something comes along, like we drove to my friend's house and we're driving, it's 11 o'clock at night, we're going through these mountain roads and they were calling us going, you okay? Oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. And we're like, my wife and I are like, no big deal. Right. So a lot of it has to do with how you look at things so that if you feel good about where you're at, then your reactions are going to be less. If you have big reactions to everything, you're going to be more stressed out and it's going to take more effort to get that under control. So mindset is huge. And mindset, here's the nice thing about mindset. You go, hey, I'm going to change it.
Oh, I totally agree on that, Gary, because the day I've started giving benefit of doubt to the way people are reacting, things have, really boiled down for me. I have found myself in a much more calmer space, and I am able to better manage my emotions for probably, a drastic change that I've seen over last one and a half months in myself is I am not reacting out. I am giving myself that time and space to think and then respond or change my position. If I am not finding that thing working as per me, I disconnect myself, I move away to a different location, and then probably after some time give it a introspective thought, and then go back and revisit that discussion with the person.
That is perfect, right? So there's a book that I read. It was kind of fascinating. It was written by a neuroscientist. Okay. And this lady was like in her 30s or 40s. And she had this catastrophic thing where she had an aneurysm that popped and blood got into her around her brain and put pressure on. So she literally lost half the function of her brain. But then gradually it came back. And then she wrote this book. And here was her insight. So when she lost half her brain, so she couldn't talk and and she couldn't use half her body. She ended up with this concept, which is beautiful, right? So she thinks of the brain as four parts. So do you guys have barbershop quartets in your country?
Not much. I've not heard
Okay,
about.
so a barbershop quartet is four voices in different ranges, and they all have to sing together. It's a beautiful kind of music, right? Because they're all singing the same song, but they're all in different parts of the register, right? But they all have to blend together because if one guy starts singing too loud, then the other guys you can't hear them, right? So
Yeah.
she thinks of our brain as four parts. So the first part is the thinking part of our brain, the problem side of our brain, the rational part of our brain, right? That's one part. Then there's this emotional part, fear, anger, right? Then there's another part that feels like we're connected with one. We're all one. And then there's this last part that's a daredevil. So when she had her brain injury, she lost that cognitive part and she lost the fear part. So the only part she had left was the part that was, I'm connected with the universe and I'm ready to take on the world. Let's do it. Let's try, right? And she was really enjoying that. And as the rest of her brain started coming back online, she started having fear again. She's like, no, I don't want that. And then she started having to overthink things. They're like, oh, right? She's like, no, no, I want to go back to just feeling like all one with the universe, right? So what I realized was that we need to think of our brain and let it all work together, but you can't have one overriding all the others. So one of the things that happens when people have that fear reaction or that anger reaction, it goes boom, and it literally takes over your brain and it shuts off the rational part. So you literally can't think because your fear reaction is like, no, thinking's way, no, we got to be running away. So we don't want to spend any energy trying to figure out whether that's a lion or tiger. We're out of here. We'll figure that out later, right? So one of the things that happens to people is they start reacting with their anger and their fear and they haven't thought about it. So what you did is perfect. 10 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. What happens is your brain will just calm down and the thinking part of your brain will kick back in. And you're like, whoa, I was just ready to punch that guy in the face. No, I shouldn't have. That would not have been a good idea, right? But if you're like in that fight or flight mode and you're like, oh, God, poof, right? And you don't care because your thinking part's turned off. You're like, whoa, that guy's twice my size. This is not gonna be a good outcome, right? So when you let that give that break, that little lag time, it lets your brain reshift and get back into harmony. And you go, okay, oh, I got this emotion and I get it, but oh, wait, we got to think this out. I'm like, okay, so let me take a step back. The emotion can go back down. It goes down because it's only meant to be short term. It goes back down, and then you can get back to real problem solving. And that other part of our brain, that where we think we're one with the universe, what an awesome feeling that is, right? And I think most religions have tapped into that feeling because they want you to feel like that, right? So like, and the daredevil thing, it's interesting because, like my wife and I like to do karaoke and we will bring people out with us and like, come on with us, we're going to do karaoke. And they're like, oh, but I'm not singing. And I'm like, why not? Like, oh, you kidding me? I'm not getting in front of an audience with a microphone. No, that isn't happening, right? And it really comes down to like where your self-esteem is and where you think what is it that you're afraid of. So my wife and I have learned over the years, first off, we're okay singers. I mean, we not be the greatest singer, but we're okay, right? But we've learned that we're good enough, okay? And we've practiced. And we've gotten used to the idea that we're not going to get up and make a fool of ourselves, which is what people worry about. Like if you worry that you're going to get up there and make a fool of yourself, the fear is actually going to make it more likely to happen. And so when you get up there without fear, then you're more likely to be relaxed. Things are going to go better. You practice a little bit, yeah, everything's good. So really, that daredevil part is really a way to say, hey, you know what? It's part of self-esteem, which is what I call confidence or self-efficacy. How good am I going to be at this new skill? And when you think of yourself as you're going to be good at it, then you're much more likely to take the leap and try it out.
Understood. Understood. Okay, this brings me to my next question. One habit that we humans have been gifted, and though it's priceless, it's very seldom used. And I believe it's the cure to our stress and worry, the humor, the laughter, the smile out there. Why is smile so, you know, difficult to find these days? It is becoming deficient in our environment. Why is it so?
Well, in India, I've read about this. Don't you guys have laugh clubs there?
Yep, yep. We do also
Yeah,
have.
and that the whole point of laugh clubs is to have people come and laugh, right? So yes, I agree. There's studies that they show babies laugh like 100 times a day, and that adults laugh like 5 times a day. So part of it is the laughter comes from novelty. So as you get older, there's not as much novelty in life because you've seen it, right? I've seen that before. I've heard that joke before. It's not funny anymore because I've heard it 5 times. Two is that you don't have much reserve. So when you're stressed out, you might be running your car at 98, so you only have two left because if 100, you can't do it anymore. Babies are running their car at 20, so they got 80, so they got a lot more reserve, so they can have more energy to laugh. They're not as worried, they're not as angry, they're not as afraid of what's going to happen, right? So they have more ability to be relaxed and laugh. So that's part of it. Smiling and laughing are really social signals to other people around us. And so when I like you watch and somebody does something that was like embarrassing, right? What you'll see is like, oh, I can't believe I said that, ha ha ha, ha, right? So that smile is telling people, or like if you see somebody and you bump into them, you smile, go, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you, right? That smile is saying, no, I'm not trying to kill you, I'm not trying to hurt you, just that was an innocent bump, sorry, oh yeah, sorry, right? So it's a social signal. And here's the problem that humans get into. We are incredibly communal. Like we were designed to be communal. and we have it's built into us to have that as a pleasurable sensation. So when we fall in love with somebody, like what, right? So our emotional part of our brain has gone crazy, and we do crazy things like say, you know what? I'm gonna live with you the rest of my life, no matter what. What? That's a crazy thing to say to anybody, right? But love makes you do that. But here's the problem. So humans are things that we're designed to be connected to and getting great pleasure out of it. But humans are the most dangerous thing in our environment. Like lions and tigers and snakes, yeah, nope. Humans, oh my God, they break our hearts, they lie to us, they steal from us, they do all kinds of bad things to us. What? So now you're in this stupid dilemma, like, I really want to be with you, but oh my God, you're the most dangerous thing in my environment. What am I supposed to do? So we have this weird catch 22 that we get stuck with. So one of the things that happens is when you're trying to meet somebody, you're like, oh, is that person going to hurt me? I don't know, right? And so the smile then goes away because you're like if you think you're gonna, you're not gonna smile at a rattlesnake or a cobra, right? You're like, no, you're dangerous. Like, so we tend to smile less because we're not comfortable because we're worried that person's gonna hurt us. When you realize that 99% of people that you're gonna meet and interact with are actually gonna be good and nice, okay. But this is the other problem that humans get into is if I'm sitting in a room and there's 10 people trying to give me $1,000. You're like, whoa, this is great. $10,000 in my pocket just for doing nothing. That'd be great. Oh, but there's one guy in the corner with a machine gun. Like, who are you paying attention to? You're paying attention to the guy with a machine gun. Because if you miss that and you're dead, the other $10,000 doesn't do you any good at all, right? So our bodies have been set up to pay attention to dangerous things. So I saw this in my office. So I would see 20 to 30 patients in a day. 28 of them would go great. Doc Sprouse, you're wonderful. Thanks so much. Oh, you were so good at karaoke tonight, blah, 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 right? Two of them wouldn't go well. What the hell? Why didn't you call my prescription? My insurance company said this, the pharmacist said that, rah, 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 rah. And they're barking at us, right? So when I went home and talked to my wife, who do you think I told her about? Right? I didn't go, oh, honey, 28 visits went great today. It was wonderful, right? Would I go home and say, can you believe these two patients yelled at me because blah, 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 right? But that's humanity. That's what we do. So we tend to focus on the bad. So when you have 100 interactions with humans that go great, it's the two that don't go great. They go, can you believe that? So my wife and I get to do a lot of traveling now. Literally every single place we travel, when we talk to people from that area, they go, oh, the people in this area are the worst drivers. I go, well, they can't be the worst drivers because the place I just went to said they were the worst drivers. And you go, wait, literally, like you're riding down a super highway with people doing 70 and 80 miles an hour in 2,000-pound pieces of metal, and they're this close to each other, and nobody's having an accident. What? How does that even happen? Right? People are stopping at a red light, people stopping at stops. So every once in a while, out of a million interactions, somebody doesn't do something right. And you go, oh, they're the worst drivers. No, it's because you're paying attention to the things when they don't go well, and you're totally ignoring when they go wrong.
I agree. I agree. And I believe usually at workplaces as well, this becomes a norm where if an employer or team member does one thing wrong, that becomes the, unwritten thing on their forehead that everybody relates to them with.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm laughing because my wife and I like to get dressed up. In our country, we have a holiday called Halloween. And on that day, you get dressed up in whatever you want to get dressed up as. So I would get dressed up as different characters. So one year I got dressed up as a female singer. Her name was Madonna. And so, yeah, so I always had a blonde wig and fishnet stockings and high heels. And right, my friends now, when they introduce me, they go, oh, this is Gary. Oh, one year he dressed up as Madonna. I'm like, stop it. That should not be the first thing that you say to them.
Yeah,
You're right.
perfect.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Can you help us with I can't stop imagining you as Madonna right now.
Yeah, see, now you're smiling. This is good. I like it. And I'm smiling too, so we're good. Yeah. We're changing the world. You and
Yes,
I.
exactly. One smile at a time. Can you help me with some techniques, or tools that people can implement in every day, probably, which are 5 minutes or 10 minutes of exercise or things that they can, do it at their own pace?
Yeah. So the worry organizer is one of those things, right? That's 5 minutes, you write down the problem, and then you can fill it in later on, right? The other one that I talk about, because here's one of the other things that I see, is this is again human. So my dog, right? One problem at a time. I'm hungry. Where's the food? I got to go to the bathroom. Let me outside, right? There's a big dog in the yard, right? She's young, right? One problem at a time, not overwhelming, right? Humans have the ability to handle more than one thing at a time. So we can handle 5, 10, 15, 30, 50, 100 things, right? We're juggling all these different balls in the air, right? But that can get us, the side effect of all that is that you get overwhelmed. So one of the exercises that I talk about to people is called shoe boxes. So shoe boxes is this, and my wife was doing this the other day. She goes, "My son is doing this, my other son is doing that, your board is doing this, and this, and yeah, we're traveling over this, and blah." And she's just the word lumping. So I got this problem and this problem and this problem, and then she's just looking around for more problems to throw on top, right? When you do all those problems and you lump them all together, it's overwhelming. You look at it going, I don't even know where to start. There's just too much stuff going on. Ah, right?
Yep.
So the answer is the word is called compartmentalization. So compartmentalization is instead of lumping them all together, the more separate. So I got this son's problem and this son's problem, and I got this next door neighbor and my health this and my professional that, blah, blah, blah. The more you separate, you keep them, no one of these things is overwhelming. It's only when you let them all morph together that you end up with this place that you don't even have the coping skills to handle, right? So the analogy I give people is the shoebox. So if I walk into a bedroom and there's 100 shoe boxes, okay, and the bottom's here and the lid's over there and the left shoe's here and the right shoe's there and a piece of paper and there's 100 and they're all thrown around the bedroom, that's overwhelming. But if I walk into the same bedroom and the box is there, the two shoes are inside, the piece of paper in there, the lid's on top, they're all put in a closet on the wall. There's 100 shoe boxes there. That's a lot of problems. That's a lot of shoe boxes, but it's not overwhelming. And then you just take one shoebox at a time. You go look at it and you put it back up. You take it down, you look at it, put it back up. That's not overwhelming. And being overwhelmed is not a good place for people to be because what that's saying is you have so many problems that you've run out of coping skills. You can't cope anymore. So now every little problem, like if you owe somebody $100 and you only have $10 in your pocket, that's bad, right? And then somebody comes along and says, "Hey, you owe me $5." You're like, I got this other bill from, I don't even have what, five. So now $5 becomes this huge deal because it's on top of the $100 that you owe somebody, right? So the not being overwhelmed allows you the energy and the reserve to say, hey, maybe I can fix that one problem. Hey, I'm going to pay the $5 one and figure out how to get the other $55 for the guy owing $100 there. Because now I can stop and I can get out of that fear mode and get my thinking brain started and go, maybe I can figure out this problem. But when you're overwhelmed, woo, you're way past all that. You can't do it.
I agree. I agree. Gary, we got into our discussion, but we didn't get to hear your introduction. Can you introduce yourself and share your life journey with our listeners?
Yeah. So I'm getting old. So I'm going to be 69 in a couple months, right? But I'm still in pretty good shape. Yay. So I play basketball and I sing karaoke. We dance a lot. So like I had some guy come up to me, he's like half my age. He goes, "Keep dancing." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I was a primary care doctor for like 38 years, 40 years, but I'm retired now, happily retired. And then I wrote this book, Highway to Your Happy Place, Roadmap to Less Stress, because I decided I want to help people get out of their stressful situation. We didn't get to talk about this, but the other half of that book. So the second half of the book is how to get rid of the stresses. The first half of the book is, hey, because I would ask my patients, well, if you didn't have so much stress, where would you be? And they would look at me like, I don't know. I never really got that far. I just wanted to have less stress, right? So I was like, dude, we need to have a place to go. We need a destination. Like my GPS doesn't work very well. I go, hey, I want to go here. And they're like, well, where's here? I'm like, I don't know. Well, how's GPS going to help you, right? So that's when I started working on the happy place. And what I realized is, and I think of happy place as a house, okay, or a home. And every home has the same construction. It has a bathroom, it has a bedroom, it has a kitchen, it has a living room and a dining room, right? They all have the same elements. They just get decorated differently. So everybody's happy place looks different, but they all have the same ingredients. And when I started writing down what the ingredients were, I was like, if that's the happy place, right? So the first one, and this is another tool that people can use, is gratitude. When you're feeling grateful, it's really hard to be afraid and angry, right? So one of the things we run into is, and again, using that castle from Germany, I'm like, if you look back 400 years ago, here's the king of Germany, right? The all-powerful king. And I'm in his house and I'm like, dude, you don't have air conditioning. You don't have central heat. You got these stupid wood stoves in the corner that are trying to heat up. You don't even have windows. What? Kidding me? You don't have a cell phone? You have to ride around in a carriage that's on a bumpy road? What the heck? I'm doing 60 miles an hour down, right? Like you don't have a stove, you don't have a microwave, you don't have a internet, you don't have a TV. What? Like my house, my humble little abode is 10 times better than the King of Germany had 300 years ago. Yet I don't know that, or I don't pay attention to that. So we take way too much for granted. There was a movie I like to watch, it's called Castaways, and the guy gets marooned on a desert island, so he's by himself. And he figures out how to make a fire. And he is jumping up and down and smiling and yelling and going, "Oh, fire!" All right. I'm sitting there going, yeah, I put my light, my match, and I'm like, well, no big deal. I'm like, no, it's a big deal. You just did this, and the fire showed up. Are you kidding me? Right? You just went like this. So there's a thing I use called the 50-point wake up. So I wake up in the morning, bing, my eyes open up, 10 points because I'm still alive. Yay, right? 10 points because I just go to the tap and there's water coming out. 10 points because I open the refrigerator and there's food in there. 10 points because I feel I'm in a safe place where nobody's trying to kill me. And 10 points because I have indoor plumbing. Yay! Right? 50 points just by opening my eyeballs. You can do that tomorrow morning when you wake up, right? 50 points. So if you start your day out plus 50, so one bad thing happens. Now you're at 40. So you lost 10 points. You're still at 40 just by opening your eyes in the morning. How freaking awesome is that? And when you go around and you look and you go, like I did this with some of my friends, like tell me the difference between you and what's going on in Germany in the castle. And as you start going through, you're like, wow, I have a car. It has electric windows. Oh my God, it has power steering. Because I remember when cars didn't have power steering and it didn't have electric windows and you had to roll. I remember one of my cars, the handle broke. So you didn't even have the handle to roll. So you had just the little stick. And it was like, it was really hard. And you're like, So when I finally got a handle, like, oh my gosh, this is so nice, right? But we have to be grateful for literally everything that we have in our environment. And when you see how much we have, antibiotics, hospitals, like, it's amazing what we have, right? But if you wake up every day going, ugh, I'm still here, -10. Like, that's a hard way to live your life. Because then when something bad happens, now you're -20. Now you're really hating life. But if you start out at plus 50, so gratitude is amazing and it makes you feel good because you go, oh, one of the gratitudes is, oh, I can envision the future. My 1-year-old grandson cannot. How freaking awesome is that, right? My patients will come and say, Doc, I'm falling apart. I'm like, really? I go, do your eyelids close? And they look at me like, what? I go, do your eyelids closed? And they're like, well, yeah. I go, guess what? There are people in the world that it doesn't. Like, be grateful that your eyelids closed. You walked in here. Yay, right? Yeah. So grateful is a big part of the happy place. And then having a purpose and feeling fulfilled. Because I've seen a lot of rich people who are miserable. And I've seen a lot of poor people who are really happy with their life because they feel fulfilled. And so it becomes critical. And then there's a thing I use called cash, and it stands for feeling connected and feeling in control, feeling accepted and having appreciation, feeling safe and having a spirituality about you, and then having hope. So when you put all that together, wow, what a nice place that is, right? It's awesome. So if people can keep an idea of where their happy place is, and then they with the stresses are just things that are getting them in the way of staying in their happy place, that's the book, right? So here's your happy place. Let's define it. So there's a place you can get to. And here's the things that are being the roadblock to keeping you from there. And let's get rid of them. Now you spend your life in your happy place. How great is that?
Wow, wow. I wish, my bank is full with the cash definition that you just gave me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right.
Mhm. Any day except $1 billion of that cash over the real, because I guess
Well, what I found is when you're in your happy place, you don't need as much money
that's true.
because it doesn't take as much to get happy, right? So
Yeah.
like, we were at my stepson's house and he was getting his pair of sweatpants. And he goes, I really like these. And I'm like, well, that's great. He goes, we're like, how much are they? He goes, well, they're like $60. I'm like, $60 for a pair of sweatpants? What? No, like I'm really happy. So I have $5 sweatpants, good with me. My wife and I buy our glasses at the Dollar General store, right? They're like $5. It's like because if they break, I'm like, I broke, well, no big deal, right? If I spend $300, then I'm really like upset if they break, right? So so when people are in their happy place and they have reserve, that's another word I use, then they don't need as much to make them happy. And
Yeah,
so life gets a whole lot easier.
I agree. I agree, Gary, with you. Any final message you would like to give to our speakers out there today? Listeners,
Yeah,
sorry.
so the book, Highway to Your Happy Place, Roadmap to Less Stress, on my website, one of the chapters is on there. The worry chapter is on there. So the website is thelessstressdoc.com. So if they go on there, they can get that. And pretty soon, like in the next week or two, I'm going to have a course that they can go online and get onto so that they can get more information for what I'm telling them here. And it's broken up into 6 sections. So if you worry a lot, do that. If you don't feel boredom or you don't have feel guilt or regret, then don't do those chapters. Just do this one, right? So that's the way it's set up. And
Wow.
then what I found is when you're writing a book, so as a doctor, like you and I are just talking one on one, so I can watch your reaction and go, oh, he's getting this, and I can move on to the next point. Or, oh, he didn't understand what I said. Let me stop. In a book, you don't have that feedback. So
Yep.
you have to write a little more generically. So it has to be more broad spectrum. So I don't know what you're getting at. So what I tell people is email me, right? I'm lessstressdoc@gmail.com because then I can personalize the message or come to one of my seminars or listen to talk. I'm hoping to sign up to go to TED Talk, same idea, right? But what I want to do is get that one-on-one connection. So that's where a seminar comes in where I can see you and go, oh, I'm looking at the audience going, oh, they're getting this, or no, they're not getting this, right? So yeah, so my personal email is lessstressdoc@gmail.com. Drop me a line, tell me what your worry is, and we'll work it out, right? Because sometimes it takes a coach to say, hey, I'm filling out this worry organizer, but I'm like, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, right? And so then I can work through the problem with them, and then you can get an idea how it works.
Yep.
And the last one is the same message I started with in the beginning, which is do not resign yourselves to being stressed out. It doesn't have to be. You can be in your happy place and not have all these stresses. Life is amazing. You have to just pay attention to it.
I totally agree. I totally agree. If you stop looking for worries, happiness is right in front of you.
It's right there. Our lives are, it, it's amazing when you look at how our lives are. The poorest people in our world are 100 times better than some of the richest people were 100 years ago.
Totally agree. Totally agree, Gary. And thanks. Really, really, appreciate you giving us time today and sharing about your wisdom around worry and linking it with your primary care career as well. Because a lot of modern medicine doctors have not find, really coming up and talking about the impact of worry and stress and how it can be overcome. They are just, you know, aligned with what they have studied and communicating that
Yeah.
only.
Yep, absolutely. Well, here's a sad statistic that's from the United States. Like, and I learned this. So if I say to somebody, "Hey, you're really stressed out, or you're depressed, or you're some psychological problem," I'd say, "Hey, you should go see a psychologist." And it turned out in this study that 75% of people never went. So if I saw somebody who was having psychological issues and I referred them to a psychologist, there was a 75% chance that they wouldn't go. So then I had to do one of two things. I either sent them going, I did my job. I sent them. If they went, they went. If they didn't, that's their problem. Or I could learn how to do it. And so I chose the latter and said, you know what? I'm going to learn how to do this. So I became the ultimate, all-encompassing doctor, right? Because I was the holistic doctor who could say, hey, I know the medicine side of this and the diagnostic side, but I also know the psychological side. And what I found was by being able to address both issues at the same time, I got way more results. And patients, interesting, this is the fascinating thing. Patients were much more willing to come to me as a psychologist, marriage counseling, depression treatments, addiction treatments, blah, 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 because they were just coming to their primary care doctor. So if their friends say, hey, where are you going today? You're like, hey, I'm going to go see my primary care doctor. I might be acting as a psychologist, but be to their friend, they're like, "Oh, okay, you're just going." If you said to your friend, "Hey, I'm going to go see a psychologist," like, "Oh, what's the matter? What's the matter? Are you crazy? Why are you right?" So there was this sort of stigma that went along with it. And the reimbursement was better because if they're going to a primary care doctor, that gets paid for. If they went to a psychologist, not necessarily, right? Because it gets reimbursed differently. So I found that by doing it myself, that I already had the patient's trust because they had dealt with me for a long time. So it was much easier for me to help them with their psychological stuff.
Well, really appreciate Gary that, and I'm really, really, grateful that we had you on the podcast today. Thanks a lot.
This was great. Thank you so much for having me on here. This is awesome. I wish I could show you a picture where I'm at. I'm at this beautiful lake on the lakefront with a boat and like rooms. It's in the woods. It's like, oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
I wish I could be.
Somebody's happy place, right?
Totally, totally. And listeners, if today's episode stirred something within you, take the first step. And remember, we have an anonymous mental health platform where you can share your stress triggers, worries, or questions without judgment. The link would be in the description, and we will also be sharing all the contact details for Dr. Gary in the description. Your healing matters, and we are listening.